HMS Gloucester was the last town-class light cruiser to be laid down before the slightly larger Edinburgh and Belfast, starting construction in September 1936, launching in October 1937 and commissioning at the end of June 1939. She had only a brief pre-war career serving on the China station before the outbreak of the Second World War saw her gradually pulled back towards the European theatre, first operating alongside the Marine Nationale in the Indian Ocean, and then moving to anti-commerce raider duties in the South Atlantic before finally being assigned to the Mediterranean Fleet in May 1940. This last assignment was just as well, since the next month Italy declared war and Gloucester was launched straight into action. Initially in a grab bag of offensive actions that included shore bombardment and attacking Italian supply convoys, whilst also covering British convoys in the maelstrom that was the central Mediterranean. During this time, Gloucester would have its bridge destroyed by a bomb which killed most of its bridge crew, whilst part of a force under Admiral Cunningham that was trying to cut off an Italian force of cruisers and destroyers from returning to their base at Taranto, as the Italian forces had been spotted escorting an Italian convoy back from North Africa. Nonetheless, the surviving command crew used the backup control stations and Gloucester stayed with the fleet for the Battle of Calabria before heading off for repairs. Most of the rest of the year was then spent on escort missions, largely taking supplies to Malta, on occasion with Gloucester herself acting as a combination supply and escort vessel, as well as accompanying the carrier Illustrious on the Taranto raid. Early 1941 saw a dud bomb leave some minor damage, but by the latter part of March, Gloucester was part of a 4-ship squadron, the largest unit of that squadron since Orion, Ajax and Perth were all smaller Leander-class vessels. Her increased firepower was somewhat offset by propeller shaft issues that were ostensibly limiting her to about 20 to 22 knots. Then they ran into 3 Italian heavy cruisers, the 2 oldest in the Regia Marina, the Trento and Trieste, and the newest, Bolzano, with the Italian ship's 8-inch guns outranging the British 6-inch guns by at least 4,000 yards. Orion, the flagship, led the squadron away, heading towards the oncoming battleships of Admiral Cunningham. There was a significant degree of concern that Gloucester might lag behind and end up being overwhelmed, but as the speed of the unit increased to 24, then 26, and then 28 knots, Gloucester managed to keep up. Then the battleship Vittorio Veneto appeared, and at 29,000 yards, salvos splashed down around Orion, which made smoke, which meant Gloucester now vanished amidst a forest of shell splashes and splinters. Thus, motivated, the cruiser managed to make some smoke of her own and surged past 32 knots, outrunning her own trial speed and the Leanders, despite her engineering officer reporting that a hull flex of as little as half an inch would see the bent propeller shaft hit a bracket, shear, and then send the attached propeller spinning off into the deep, and that's if they were lucky. An air attack from the carrier Formidable persuaded the Italians to back off a little bit, and soon the tables began to turn as torpedo hits to Vittorio Veneto and Pola left the British now in pursuit. Although the arriving battleships would enjoy great success that night at the Battle of Cape Matapan, Gloucester and the other cruisers would end up not finding any further targets, although they did come within a few minutes of being able to hit the Italian main formation out of the darkness. After all this excitement, the ship fixed its engines and went back to the usual routine of escort and shore bombardment for a couple of months, until the German invasion of Crete began. This consisted of the famous paratroop assault and also a significant seaborne invasion force. Gloucester was assigned to one of 4 formations that were on the lookout for this latter force, which was duly intercepted and destroyed over the night of the 21st to 22nd of May. As part of Force B, the forces being A through D, she combined with Fiji, Orion, Dido and 6 destroyers to then sail to join up with Warspite, Valiant and their destroyers, meeting up with Ajax and 2 other destroyers as well along the way. However, whilst still in a relatively small formation, no less than 50 Ju-87 Stukas attacked, but a spirited anti-aircraft defence saw nothing more than near misses to Gloucester and Fiji, albeit at the expense of much of their anti-aircraft ammunition stores. Further air attacks continued to develop, and the various Royal Navy forces now coalesced into a single formation to provide themselves with the best air defence. A few ships were detached to head back to Alexandria to rearm, but Gloucester was kept, although she was down to less than a fifth of her anti-aircraft ammunition stocks. But an unintended side effect of the multiple force agglomerations was that the Rear Admiral, who was finally in charge, didn't know how short of ammunition the ship was. She'd actually been retained because she was one of the few ships with a full radar suite. Along with Fiji, she was thus sent to cover 2 destroyers who were heading off to rescue the survivors of HMS Greyhound, which had itself been hit and sunk by air attack earlier in the day. An hour later, made aware of her shortages, the Rear Admiral issued recall orders for the 2 cruisers, but by then it was too late. Halfway back to the cover of the main force, another heavy Stuka attack developed, and the ship finally ran out of anti-aircraft ammunition. Now, defenceless save for attempts to dodge and occasionally firing star shells in an attempt to dazzle the Luftwaffe pilots, Gloucester was hit repeatedly and began to sink. Caught in a similar situation, the racing Fiji could only drop some spare rafts, as to slow down would invite immediate destruction, although in the event she would also shortly run out of ammunition, be hit, and then sunk a few hours later. Gloucester's survivors were thus stuck in the water for quite some time, and in the end only about 10% of her 807-man crew would survive to be picked up by the Germans.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.